Okay, roll call.
Ray,
Here.
Sarah. Here. Rick,
Here.
Keith,
Here.
Jean's here.
Okay, is there any public comment on agenda items? Go ahead.
Destiny. On the, special use permit for the bar. For a fence,
Okay,
a soundproof fence, I understand. Do you want me to stand up there or, yeah?
tell us your name, where you live.
My name's Linda Lavalette and I live at 5117 I Road, Clark River.
Okay.
So I understand, there's a special use permit that's being requested for an outdoor soundproof fence for the bar, or the church bar. Our property's become the overflow for inadequate parking at the church bar. This has caused damage to our property. It's created unsafe conditions to pull in and out of our driveway. Not to mention the refuse and the people screaming at us, saying they can park there. The utilized square footage of the facility, I think, needs to be reevaluated. I think in the original special use permit, it was the main floor space that was gonna be used. They used the loft area, and now they're proposing an outdoor area. So I don't know what the parking, they have that little lot. I don't know how many cars are allowed to park there. It's not marked off in parking. But I think it needs to be, someone needs to take a look at it. I don't know how a fence can be soundproof. We can hear live music inside the building when bar doors are closed. Traffic is a huge concern. On Good Friday, I was unable to turn left off the highway onto I Road and get fully off the highway because of the pedestrian traffic crossing back and forth from the parking lot to the bar. Children going to a food truck, it's ridiculous. People in and out of the bar. Vehicles are attempting to parallel park on our lawns, that holds up traffic. They try to parallel park, they get out, they pull in front ways, they back up, they don't know what they're doing. They're holding up vehicles from both ways. They pull into our driveway, they turn around many times on the weekends. The section 604 general standards that are set forth aren't being followed, specifically items C, G, and H. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is the special use permit, the original one. Has that wavered in any way since it was issued? Like times of that they can do business, times of operation, the type of operation. I believe it was a tasting room. It's a straight up bar with lots of people going in and out. Lots of noise, lots of traffic, and it's impacted our lives as well as our neighbors. What I understand, can I get a copy of that special use permit, that first one? Am I allowed to request that?
You are,
Okay, how do I go about doing that?
you'd have to file a FOIA.
Okay, I can do that. From my understanding, you can't modify that at all unless there's another special use permit that is requested to change that original one, correct?
We don't usually has to come, gonna come.
Okay, all right. I understand,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. That's basically what I wanted to express, my concerns and how this has really impacted our life. It's not a tasting. I mean, this isn't a few people going back and forth and stopping in for an hour. It's not.
Okay,
It's a straight up party.
thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anyone have a conflict of interest on the board? The approval of agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it. All in favor? Aye. Okay, public hearing, there is no public hearing. Approval of minutes from last month. We'll make a motion to approve the minutes in April 2nd, 2025.
I'll second
All in favor?
it. Aye.
Aye. Minutes accepted. Okay, zoning administrators report.
I got an email today, regarding on the second page of the zoning report. SBA Communications and Verizon Wireless intends to upgrade a tower on K Road.
Is that the tower that's on roof?
Yes, yes it is. So I just got that today. They're asking if there's any type of permit or anything needed. I haven't encountered this yet, so I'll have to look into that. Anyone have thoughts on that tower, or, for my guess, it was,
I don't believe there'd be any extra, permitting required there for changing all
I
sectors.
think it was, from my understanding, permitted years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so.
Yes.
2014,
Okay,
I think.
So if you're just swapping out equipment antennas, no additional height or compound expansion.
that's what, this is the email that I was sent, yeah, it said they're upgrading some,
I don't know anything that would require them to have a permit to do what they do. That's pretty common with installers.
yeah. And then there was six. Yeah, five permits for builds, houses, garages. The animal special use permit is finalized, so that should be pretty much done with. Let's see. Well, I guess what we just talked about, so a special use permit was, sent in from Melts for a fence. So it's within 500 feet of an intersection, so. Said, well, you need a special use permit for that, that's right in the ordinance, 500 feet within any intersection requires, a fence over 4 feet requires a special use permit. And if you go to the sketch that I was sent. Yeah, just go to the sketch. So in the red, I wrote in the red, and then the black is what they did, so. They have to have so many parking spots per square footage. Page 48 of our ordinance, 1 parking space per 150 square feet of floor space and outdoor sales space. That's on page 48 of our ordinance, under retail stores and service establishments. The stall width is supposed to be 9 feet. So. I mean, if you look at the sketch. On the back of the sketch is the parking lot across the road.
Got a few comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the parking lot across the road is in Wells Township. I don't
Yeah.
think we have any jurisdiction over that. And also, I feel we should have an updated survey. There's been property exchange in that area. And I'm pretty sure it was probably done by a registered surveyor. And I would like to see that building along with the ramp and all the current footages and easements and so on to the property in the back spelled out.
I think it's in there in the property file. I think it is, the land division, at least there is a land division attached to
I
it,
don't know, that's, we never seen that.
I don't think there is a land division, there's a land acquisition.
or acquisition.
Acquisition.
Should have been a land division or land split or something.
No, there was none. There was never a land division there. It was an acquisition. They purchased more property.
Okay, then,
Yeah.
I guess we should see a survey for that then.
Something that stands out to me is the wording of outdoor sales space.
Yes. So it's like, is that included in the square footage? It's a bit discretionary. Is the total square footage just the building? Or is the outdoor sales space considered the area within the fence, which would add a significant amount to this square footage? Therefore, adding a significant amount of parking spaces needed.
I think originally that property was advertised as 6,000 square feet. And that must have included the upstairs and the downstairs, and I don't know about the balcony. But that was also shown in the original sales. So I guess, 6,000 plus is a little bit more than 3,000.
Yeah, 3,000 is
That's the main floor.
the main floor of the building. That's just what I have from, I don't, that's what I have on the GIS. So if there's the loft, well, then that adds some. How big is that? I don't know. Is the outdoor sales space included with the footage?
There's some gray area. I don't believe it is. That's some gray area that we needed.
Yeah,
Cause it says though, floor space and outdoor sales space, it does say that would be.
Define outdoor sales space.
So I think that's probably something for our lawyer to check, but just a quick Google search to it's called lawinsider.com. I don't know that we would go with this, we definitely would want to verify with our in-house, but it says that an outdoor display and sales area means outdoor open space area where produce or merchandise is displayed and or sold and or where services are provided in conjunction with a business located within a building or structure on the same lot. So there's.
right. So if you're serving inside,
You take it off.
it wouldn't be like you're serving, I'm kind of like selling whatever farmer's market. That's kind of what I'm gathering from what you just said.
Well, actually, the way, how I. look
Outdoor
at-
sales, unless there's, I think they're selling the liquor inside or whatever they're selling, the beer, selling it inside and then people are going outside with it.
That's true.
So
If they bring it out, let's say somebody's seated outside and then they bring it out to them, though, does that change the definition? You're right, there's a lot of gray area.
Right, that's,
That's what I say. It needs to be looked at. It's not defined. It's not definitive that's an outdoor sales area. I mean, that's.
Mhm.
right,
I mean, you see that other establishments, you see there's outdoor seating.
Sure.
Often,
sure.
But I would think for this use, cause this is where they're talking about parking, so if we add on to a fence around it and go outdoors, then it's gonna add to parking, cause that's gonna have more
That's what I'm
people,
saying.
so.
That may not be included in the square footage of the facility.
Right, but I'm saying I think it should be included. I mean, that's my opinion, that we should include that, as far as the number of parking spaces go. Because you're gonna have more people going, you can fit more people there though. So there should be ample for more parking. I mean, like I said, yes, I definitely think we need to check with an attorney.
Yeah,
I mean, that's because it's different. I'm reading it that way, you're reading it another, so.
It needs to be, looked at, by somebody who knows better. And a better definition of what that space would be called.
I mean, at a minimum, it's 20 spaces needed at minimum, according to ordinance. Probably more. And
As far as the parking lot across the street, that piece of property goes with that establishment. Even though it isn't in Border Township jurisdiction. So it is usable for that purpose to them. So I don't know, given the dimension for that, I don't know what they end up with spaces if you do the math.
Can there? That's considered non-contiguous property in your ordinance, so it's not actually allowed to be used as parking because it's a separate parcel.
But it always was.
The requirements of your ordinance here require that off-street parking shall be provided on the lot to which it pertains.
But it always was used that way.
Not
Could you consider it grandfathered that way?
In the way that it is not expanded or enlarged or increased in any way, yes, non-conforming. In this case. You may, like I said, want to rely on legal counsel to determine, one, if this property is non-conforming and across the jurisdiction, this may be considered a joint application with both the county and the township, which would be a whole nother sticky thing. The non-contiguous property issue is not allowable in your ordinance. The non-conforming status of it, because the use has changed from church to a new type of use, that triggers a non-conformity. So it's being used for a different use. The intensity of what's being used for parking may be an issue. The third there, where the required off-street parking shall be on the lot to which it pertains, definitely applies for this. So if the property is being expanded, the parking has to go on the lot to which it is pertains. It can't be expanded to that other lot. You have no jurisdiction over that anyway. So there are definitely several issues with this development that probably require a higher level of.
Right.
So your suggestion is we send it up to the attorneys, or we just, that.
Yeah, I think that would be
go
in
to
your
the
best
attorneys?
interest, yeah.
I think the county ordinance is written the same way ours is.
Largely, a lot of them, Delta County came off the original Delta County ordinance, yeah. Depends, the county's is dated. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's just places where yours is more updated.
That's what it's gonna require, is we move to have some more research done here before this thing gets looked at any further.
Yeah, if the parking lot across the street can't be used, that's a pretty big problem, the parking for sure. So,
Yeah, I was just looking at the quick map, there's definitely not room for 20 spaces in this area that they're proposing.
and if you see where I have 63 feet written in 30, you can see they. According to the sketch, they want to put the fencing through the blacktop. The entire blacktop is like 63 feet wide, but they're drawing it. I guess in the middle of it, I think it's because of the ramp. If you notice the ramp coming down, which is wheelchair accessible, has to be accessible to your indoor fence area. So I mean, they can expand that parking. From this sketch could be another 30 feet deep. The parking lot could be another 30 feet deep, which would provide additional spaces, but I don't know if it's gonna be 20.
Have you done the math of in these areas based, because I know there's quite a few dimensions here of like. You have any idea of just in this like proposed area, how many spaces they'd be able to fit?
The one across the street would be about 20, if it's 9, that's 9 feet per space. And so I'm thinking you can get close, maybe 18, that's just rough, don't quote me, but maybe 18 in the one across the street. I mean, definitely less than that on the one, definitely less than the one on the church side, or the brewery side, maybe half that, maybe.
Well, that ramp comes out probably 10 feet from the church,
Yeah,
I would think. So you're talking 45 feet roughly, based on these figures. So 45 divided by 9 feet, gives you how many spaces?
5.
You know, minimum,
By the year.
you gotta have alley between the vehicles for getting out.
No, space is required to be 9 feet, right?
9 feet,
Yes.
Yeah, if you have 63 feet of depth, you could put, what, 5, 6 maybe on each side?
Yeah, it looks
If you see what I'm saying? Like one facing, if cars are facing north, facing south, if you kind of can picture that. If there's cars facing the highway, pulling into the parking lot. And they pull in and they're facing the highway, you can fit probably about 5 or 6 in a row. And then same thing with the other side, if the car is facing south.
Am I understanding it correctly that each one of those 9 feet wide stalls need to be 23 feet long? Like deep?
Yeah. Mhm. Yep. Well, yeah, you fit 5 or 6 on each side unless there's a different way to construct it, just.
I do know I have 9-foot garage doors and I can't open the door to get out.
That's true.
If you're talking about 9 foot for stall width.
Especially with today's vehicles,
Pardon?
especially with today's vehicles, they're a lot larger than they used to be.
Right.
Seems like nothing really we can do about
Yeah.
this today, though.
Right, okay. So,
Table,
Simple question, maybe the answer there. Yeah.
do you need a motion to table? You just table it.
This table.
then I had civil infractions in here too, this longer article is. I summarized it in here, just kind of talks about the process of. Civil infractions on the last page, I kind of summarized it, and that's, yeah, this is the process, this is all. Verbatim from the article from MTA. So kind of just go over the. How a civil infraction would work.
I've got additional stuff for
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and I think Ryan will probably be able to expand pretty well on this, and then I put a example of Sheboygan County's ordinance wording. Just to, just as an example. And then where it possibly could fit into our ordinance, section 1204, under A. So,
That is something the board required, it was brought up at the last meeting about the citations, and we said that we could do this before we do the whole ordinance, we could start the citation sooner.
yeah, I guess I should have said that, so,
Yeah,
possibly making an amendment for the civil infractions. First, instead of waiting until the whole ordinance is done, because then we may have to wait a year or more. So if you do the civil infractions up front with an amendment, that would be all set to go. Which would give the township a little recourse on enforcing ordinance.
I think Ryan was, you already talked about that, and you know, yeah, Ryan was at the board meeting, so he's aware.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
Thank you.
Let's move on to unfinished business. Master plan,
Yeah, I put that on there again, I'm relying on Ryan with some of this, and, next week, Brett and I are gonna sit down and go over some of Charlie's notes, because we never did issue any renewals. And then we did receive a letter, I asked Steve, remember Charlie kept saying before we issued any renewals on them, that he was checking with a lawyer. So I finally reached out to Steve and he got an answer. So you've got that, and then Brett and I are gonna go through the, Charlie's emails and, you know, documents that he has to try to find the list and the letter, and we're going from there to get those out. For the STR renewal, so we're working on compiling that. We'll work on that next week, we should have that for the next meeting.
you're moving on to the list of unfinished business.
Again, that pertains to, I have that on there that Charlie was supposed to send Keith and I a list of unfinished things, like these renewals and anything else that he had not, and we had never received it. So again, we're gonna kind of go through his notes and see where we're sitting on everything, so that's another one too, I just wanted to make you aware.
Okay, moving on to new business. Ryan,
Well, I just, like Brett said, I have a little bit more information on municipal civil infractions. The direction of the board. The direction of the board was to start at enforcement and then work. Get that adopted and then go return back and go on for the entire ordinance. So I just have. A couple of things in there, that is at the top, the municipal civil infraction ordinance from the Township in Marquette County. What we'll need to do is look at section 1204, section 907. 7, they go together. To decide how to transition the misdemeanor criminal process that's in the ordinance now into the municipal civil infraction process. And if it's your purview as the planning commission to retain the ability to cite as a misdemeanor or to just focus solely on civil infractions. The process for that then is that we pass a municipal civil infraction ordinance that lays out the process for doing that. And incorporate that wording into the zoning ordinance as the penalty for infractions. So there's 2 separate amendments that will be done. One is the adoption of this ordinance, and the second is the amendment of the zoning ordinance. So that's what we'll be focusing on in our first couple. I don't know how long it'll take exactly. It should, if we turn around quickly, 2-3 months to get this first amendment passed. The other thing that the township will need to do is reach out to the Township Association, the Michigan Township Association, to get in touch about getting tickets. Because the tickets are specific to, they come from a specific printer and they're ordered in quantity. But the Township Association shares packs of tickets with individual townships, I believe. The ticketing process then is specific, it's outlined in that ordinance, and then it has to be done a certain way to be able to move forward to the courts. You can't just write up your own ticket, and that doesn't work. So the 2 articles in there just kind of again give an overview of municipal civil infraction process. I think our priority is to decide if you like the ordinance, basically what sticking points you have in any of the ordinance in the information that's been presented to you. The thing we will also have to do once we're through with this is go back and look at the light ordinance and the noise ordinance, because they both use different terms and overlap with each other. And then the process for issuing municipal civil infractions for those will need to be amended and updated as well. So there's a difference between how these all work. The ordinance itself only regulates blight as in the use of a property as a junkyard. So it goes up to here. The blight ordinance itself allows the township to do certain actions that are outlined in statute to remediate blight. And then there is the activity of collecting junk, waste, that sort of thing. It's also regulated by that ordinance as a police power, not a land use. So in the way that we enforce blight, police power side on the blight ordinance, the land use side on the zoning ordinance, it's not necessarily the same unless you can substantially prove that a property has reached a level whereby you could classify it as a junkyard. And such a junkyard is only allowed in certain places through a certain process. So.
Steve just asked, do you need separate tickets for blight and?
No, same ticket.
Same ticket.
Yeah, it's just the method how you fill it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I think that's, so what I think, what I'm going to do next for you is come up with draft wording and then draft text for the ordinance amendment. Focuses on 1204 and 907 because those 2 go together. 907 is the administrator's ability to issue notices of violation, which goes with the misdemeanor process actually. So if we're removing the misdemeanor process, we're going to remove 907. And then, the wording for municipal civil infractions will replace that into a form. Come to that at the next meeting, get your approval for it and moved on towards adoption.
Okay.
So walking back just a little bit, it's been 6 months since I was here last, right? I wanna get the sense too, because after I talked to the board a couple weeks ago, we did submit a revised contract and the board agreed to the contract. That begins with the municipal civil infraction enforcement process and then going over the ordinance in its entirety and then working on potential map updates, like you requested. So I think what the long-term thoughts for this project is, we get the enforcement process done. We definitely want to look at short-term rentals and how those are regulated. We've talked about zoning for agricultural like uses. We talked about solar, wind, and battery storage. There's certainly other things. I have started auditing the ordinance for other areas. Mostly it's just wording. There's a couple other places. Such as, there's areas where private garages are defined as accessory structures, but allowed as principal uses. That's a conflicting area. I think there's room to move the private road standards from a conditional use permit process where it might be. It's not directly applicable to a general standard that applies to all different types of development. There's certain things in the special use permit approval process that we'll look at. And again, with variances by the planning commission for non-conformities, which is something that you're not allowed to do as a planning commission. So there's certain little areas like that, major things that will hit. Obviously, there's, spelling, conflicting senses, things like that will hit as well. We probably want to go through certain definitions that you point out. It'll be a process. Generally keep a list of all the actions that we go over in a spreadsheet that directly applies to the ordinance, and then I'll provide you with updated wording as we go along for your approval. So any other questions about any of that so far?
You answered what I was gonna ask you about that, we're supposed to, how you're gonna start the citations. Then when you get that draft up, if you wanna get it to me, I think you have an email address, and I can include that in the packet.
Okay.
And I usually send those out the Friday before the meeting, so the board can have a chance to look at it, and when you get here, you won't have to read it when you're here, you can get a little bit ahead of it and
Right.
get the ball rolling on it.
Thank you.
So, the other thing I wanted to ask, just because I'm interested, is how's the citizen planner going for everybody?
Good.
Good, so a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anything that's come out of that yet that you think that we should explore while we're working on the zoning ordinance?
I think we need to explore how the master plan, I think we need to backtrack a little bit on that.
Yeah.
I know, you heard me say Brett and I are gonna get together, trying to find all the correspondence, and I did reach out to Grave. There that did ours, and they sent me, I'll forward it to you as well, they sent me like what they did in the process and a copy of the contract and what they were gonna do and how it went, so I'll send all that to you too.
Alright.
Then after Brett and I go together, I'll send you what we found and
Yeah.
we can kind of get that all shored up, so we're good to go with that.
So the other part of that, the revised contract that we gave the board was the development of a public zoning layer that goes with the map, or goes with the map updates. So the map updates are the trickiest part because in your master plan is where you lay out any potential district changes. And moving to a zoning by parcel process like you'd like to necessitates that we make decisions about where zoning is directly, which may mean that zoning in certain areas may change. And we want to provide some sort of substantial basis for doing that ahead of actually doing it. So whether that means that we walk back a little bit to the master plan, or we just lay that out in meetings, this is how we're going to do this, this is our rationale for this, this is our process for doing it. And then we make those adjustments as one amendment at the end when we're ready to adopt. That gets around having to rezone several times or send notices to different property owners. Once you get above 11 properties, you don't necessarily have to notify everybody that the zoning is changing. It just becomes part of the public hearing process.
And so we can make changes to the master plan still.
Yes, well, it depends what you find in your, yeah.
Yeah,
So if it's adopted, then what we do is frame it as an amendment. An amendment has a process that's similar to the adoption process. It takes about 2.5 months, depending on meetings, to, once you have finalized, there's another public comment period, public hearing, and you adopt the amendment. If you go through your documentation and found something that wasn't done quite correctly, there may be opportunity for us to just kind of go back, rework a couple areas, and then go through the adoption process again without having all at once. So there's, I don't wanna say, there were any errors made, but we can correct the errors if we need to.
okay, perfect. Anybody else?
No,
Yeah, let's move on to short-term rental renewals.
Yeah, I think I covered that, because when you're, yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna go over those, you got that, yeah.
Special use permit applications.
Just the,
Just what we
just the
have.
one we discussed, yeah.
Communications,
Just 1 minute on that, the special use, that fellow that wanted to put that short-term rentals down on the lake. And that, little small
tiny
mobile
house,
home,
a tiny house.
yes, that tiny house, what transpired there so far, where do we stand on that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
That one, from Illinois, Naperville,
Oh, wait,
The one from Chicago. When you got contacted you about the special use permit.
oh,
You were gonna call her.
yeah, I spoke to her on the phone and I mean, we were at, so there was no public hearing for the special use permit. That's where we're at. So I can't, she applied for a special use permit in R2. But there was no public hearing. So that's why I haven't done anything yet. So I don't know where we're gonna go with that.
I think it was originally granted. Are we talking about that same little tiny one?
That's 600 square feet, but she didn't have it. She didn't have
Right,
the
she's supposed to
600
make-
square feet.
Yeah, but Charlie initially
He told her.
issued it.
Did you give her some options though?
He was supposed to,
So
yeah,
she applied for a special use permit.
right.
There was no hearing. And that's why I haven't signed anything, because I would be signing it without a public hearing, which.
Yeah.
Can't do.
We didn't give her, no, we didn't do that because remember that Ray said about the 600 square feet, so when Charlie told her she could. And he sent the check, but he never signed anything.
No,
And then Ray said about the 600 feet and he was gonna call and tell her,
some options.
yes, give her the options that she could either add on or what she could
Change
do,
it or
yes.
change the ordinance.
And that was the, yeah,
Change the porch area or something.
right, to the coach porch to get it to the 600 feet.
So I guess
So
to
no,
answer,
nothing was never,
to answer your question, I guess nothing's been updated.
so she needs to be contacted.
So, I mean,
So
are
is
we gonna have a special hearing or?
You need to give them the options to bring it up to the standard.
Right.
To meet the standard before she can have the special use permit public hearing. Correct, am I right?
Correct, yes, Keith, do you want to call her maybe? Maybe you should call you more familiar with her, huh?
Give me your info. huh?
Have Keith call her, and then you can explain to her that she either needs to bring it up to par and what she can do with it, or.
that, I think there was another issue there with, you said the 600 square feet, and I think that was it has to be 2 doors, 1 on each end of a dwelling, that's considered a dwelling. And before we do anything, I think we should check our definition of dwelling, make sure that there's not some other issues there.
We talked about that last time,
I think we did.
what did we decide on that last time?
I think as long as you had a window or something there.
Yeah,
Ryan, you got any advice on that one?
Well, again, I don't know all the specifics of this. If it's a tiny home, but it doesn't meet the definition of a dwelling, then it's not an allowable dwelling, per your ordinance. So yes, there does have to, you do have a provision where there's 2 accessible entrances, for every dwelling that's used as such. If it's not, if it doesn't meet the definition of a dwelling, and it meets something else like recreational structure, that could be different. Again, not knowing all the specifics.
But I believe it was to be, this is supposed to be used as a short-term rental type situation is what that was supposed to happen. So given that, it doesn't still need it, it would still need to have that 600 square feet along with the ability to access it.
So that's something that is, something we're going to have to go over, because my understanding is that the township doesn't have a direct definition of short-term rental and the use of. So whether or not that she could have a short-term rental in, because it's not directly stated that it needs to be in a dwelling. Do the dwelling standards apply? So. Yeah, that's another sticky issue that we'll have to address.
Right.
I don't know exactly, and again, not knowing the specifics of everything, how to actually put that in a bucket for
And
you.
I think given the idea that these tiny homes are becoming very popular, I think that's something that needs to be spelled out
In the
Right.
in this ordinance.
I mean, currently it doesn't meet the criteria of the ordinance.
Right. What it could, if it meets the 600 square feet, but the second door is the other issue. That it does not have, so.
Does it have to be a door, or does it have to
Doesn't
be?
meet the, I mean, if it doesn't meet the ordinance, I'm not gonna sign off on it.
No,
I shouldn't.
right.
And you, I would assume, return her application fee?
That was before me, no, I don't believe so.
Oh,
But the question is, if she can get it up to the standard, then it's allowable. So that we need to be able to make sure she knows what her options are to get it there. So if Keith's gonna follow, then that's the best route at this point, is to make her aware of the fact that she can get it to an acceptable position to be considered for the permit.
do you know what that, it looks, I'm just glancing at our current, for a single family dwelling. It does mention, I don't think we talked about like a crawl space or something underneath. But I do see that it specifies that there does need to be some sort of something underneath the dwelling as well, just something to
To be
think about.
considered a dwelling,
Let's see, 41,
to be considered a principal building.
this is the under single family dwellings.
So it's
And it specifies the dwelling contains a storage, crawl space, capability area, and basement located under the dwelling. Or in a separate structure, anyway, you can just something to pay attention to when it comes to that.
Yeah, I have another question.
Yeah.
Was it Eagle ever contacted on that regarding, are we gonna end up something like Amel down there
And then she's allowed
or in a
to.
floodplain or?
On this one,
Or
I haven't
health department, I guess, too.
that's it, okay.
I guess I kind of feel.
I don't know, I mean, this was before I was here
Yeah.
again, but not to my knowledge, was Eagle involved in this in any way? Is it within 500 feet of the lake?
Oh, I'm sure it is. I think the lot's only, what, 100?
So she built this place?
It's not built, it was brought.
It was already there.
It's on wheels.
They replaced something.
It had axles underneath it and wheels, and that's how they haul it in there, and it's set on a pad, I believe. It's similar to what you would do with a mole, but it's just, it's very small, you know.
Gotcha.
As far as the setback from the water and the high water mark, I have no idea where that stuff is,
Yeah.
so.
I think it's 582 feet above sea level, but.
From our perspective, if it meets the setback requirements, and then the rest of the requirements to consider it as a dwelling, then if she meets those requirements, then by all means, she has the right to obtain the permit.
Correct, yeah.
But she needs to be made aware of what needs to happen there in order to get that to that point, so.
So if she did update it, I mean, somebody would have to, I mean. She would say, hey, I updated it, so how are we gonna know if she actually did?
You have to do a site.
You know?
Yeah, you have to go say.
You have to go and look.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, talk to her and see what she wants to do and go from there.
Yeah, she might have said, the heck with
She
it, who
needs to,
knows?
I'm not gonna go through all
I think
that.
she's renting it out, I think it's listed, I believe, on. Verbo or Airbnb.
You've seen it on there?
Yep,
It is.
yep, it's on there.
Yeah.
Well,
I have a
wanted
few.
to do repeat that, she's a violation of that too.
There you go.
Yeah, I should get into that.
Well, consequences, so.
Yeah, that's
Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Okay, so Keith will contact. You do anything else on that one, or you all good with that, Ray?
I'm all set.
Okay.
All right.
The only thing I might wanna mention too, if what we have in our ordinance, if people wanna make a change, they can. They have that right to amend the ordinance at their expense. So, just we wanna keep that in mind.
at their expense, can you explain that? What do you?
Oh, I still need approval for everybody, I don't know, but that's.
The public hearing and the mailings and all that.
Like a variance, you're saying she can,
There's a process by which somebody can petition the planning commission for an amendment of the wording of the ordinance. Generally, then you would be presented with text, somebody just can't say, well, I wanna add this, they have to give you something to add, basically. And you then, in a public hearing, remove that and move towards adoption like you would for any other amendment. Generally, you rely on the future land use plan and your master plan to decide whether or not the proposed amendment meets the standards that you set for planning. That's how you fall back on either approving or denying an application like that.
Okay, moving on. Any public comment on non-agenda items? Perfect, public comment, any comments from the board? On that meeting? Okay, adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll say.
All in favor?
All right.
Meeting's